Howdy, hello, and welcome to Alpha Phenomenon Gaming or Phat Love Talk, depending on where you're listening to this podcast. Oh, that's right. This is a double feature, baby. I'm going to be posting this video on both my YouTube channel and my podcast. So if you're a fan of one or the other, or you didn't know I had one or the other, now you've been informed. You're welcome. Now, guys, today I want to talk about the guy behind me, George Kamel. Let's take a look at his channel. And as you've seen, or as you can see rather, I have watched a few of his videos, and he's one of the Dave Ramsey personalities. And today we are specifically talking about 401ks, and specifically we're going to be talking about his 401k video from a couple months ago, right here specifically, how much you should have in your 401k by age. Now, this video has some shocking statistics because he uses some high bar statistics, and I love George Kamel. I want to say his name is Kamel. I can't be sure. But the point is, I do love the guy. He does have the best intentions in his heart. And he's, in his 30s, so he's the youngest of the Ramsey personalities. And so he tries to make videos that kind of go towards the younger audience, I would say. But I don't go out of my way to learn the new slang and utilize it. So that being said, the cringe is a little bit up there, but the advice is he's being serious. So let's go ahead and just jump into it, and I'll let you guys be the judges.
Breaking news, America's broke and headed toward a retirement crisis.
Would you say it's time for everyone to panic? Yes, I would, Kent.
And I'm not just being dramatic, like those fear-mongering cable news anchors or your niece when the tag on her shirt suddenly becomes itchy. According to a recent study from Ramsey Solutions, nearly half of Americans aren't saving at all for retirement, and those who do save aren't saving enough. That's about as sad as that scene in Titanic where Rose killed Jack by not scooting over. Just scoot a little bit, Rose. Just a skosh would have done it. You could have saved a man's life by skoshing. But here's the deal. You don't have...
Yeah. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't know what the word skosh meant until I watched this video, and I looked it up, and I was like, yeah, that's beyond me. I don't need to use terms like skosh, okay? She could have moved over, made a little bit of space. That would have made just as much sense as saying she could have moved to skosh. I don't know. It's a little bit cringy. I want to show a little bit more of this clip before we pause.
have to be one of those people. You don't need anyone's permission to start saving right now to make your retirement dreams a reality. So how much should you be saving? And what if you're behind and you're already in your 30s or 40s or even 60s? Well, in today's video, we'll take a look at what average Americans have saved for retirement by the decade so you can see how your nest egg stacks up.
There we go. And he says by the generation, we're only going to do up to age 40. I'm not going to do 50, 60, 70. Just because I'm in my 30s and I feel like my target audience isn't going to be listening to me way up there. So if you feel like I need to cover it, I can always come back to a part 2. But I'm just going to cover the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So that being said, we're going to jump right ahead and we're going to get right into it.
Data. Americans in their 20s. Average balance, $10,500. Contribution rate, 7%. Okay, it's not a lot. And let me just say, 7%, it's not going to get the job done. And I get it. You're young. You probably haven't earned much yet. But the earlier you start investing, the better. Even just 5 years can make a huge difference and could really impact when you'll be able to retire. The important thing is to just get started building a strong financial foundation as soon as you can. Build that habit. And this starts with getting out of debt, building an emergency fund. As soon as you've done that, it's time to start investing. And what I recommend is 15% of your income going into retirement.
Boom, I'm going to pause it right there. He wants you to save in your 20s 15% of your income. Now, people in their 20s, I just turned 30 last year, so I'm turning 31 this year. So in my 20s, or I'm not going to say that yet, people in their 20s, I'll go back to that, are either in one of two camps. They're going to college and they live at home, or they're going to college and they live on campus. And then the third is they don't go to college and they're just working and you're probably living at home or living, with roommates or something along those lines, some sort of living arrangement. Parents are making them pay some sort of rent after they're 18, something along those lines. But the point is 15% of your income in your 20s is what he's saying. Early 20s, this seems ridiculous. Late 20s, I can justify it. But we're not even at the wildest part yet. What are we at? 220? I want to skip ahead to 248. because this is going to blow your minds. This is legitimately going to blow your minds.
For these years. Here's what I mean. Let's say your annual salary is $50,000. Investing 15%.
Okay. Okay, let's stop there for just 1 second because it's just obscene to think a man in his 20s or woman, anybody, any individual, it doesn't matter. It's across the board. Any 20-year-old is making $50,000. First of all, George, you wildin', okay? This is not a reality. And even to this day, I turned 30. I have never made $50,000. Why? Because people who don't have degrees, people who go out of a high school education, don't make $50,000 unless they land in the right career, the right field, the right trade, etc. A large chunk of Americans do have the debt problem, do have the crisis of financials, because they work at like a Walmart or a fast food restaurant, or just a regular restaurant for that matter. Everyday Americans don't make $50,000. And yes, that's partial to inflation, but I'm also going to say it's a large part due to the fact that the economy doesn't give out that type of a wage for everyday workers. And I just don't feel like it would ever be a reality that we live in where $50,000 is made by the average high school education individual, especially in their 20s. If that does happen, inflation is probably going to happen, and that $50,000 will stretch as far as $30,000 did 10 years ago. But that's just my 2 cents. Let's keep going.
Of your income would be $7,500 a year or $625 a month. If you invested that amount every year for 30 years starting at age 25, and we're assuming a 10% rate of return, you would have $1.3 million by age 55.
Ooh, doggy. Look at those buzzwords. You're going to have 1.3 million buckaroos at 65. Ooh, doggy, you can retire. You can sip lemonade on the beach at the Bahamas every single year. Go on that fancy cruise you've wanted to go on your whole life because you can't afford it, and COVID ruined your love of cruises because now you don't know if it's safe or not. Yeah, doesn't matter when you have $1.3 million because money is just there to keep you alive at that point. It's not there to help you survive like most people. All right? So let's break this down. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. The 1.3 million set me off. George, you're a great man. I swear, I know you are, just because I've watched your personality and your videos over the years, even before this YouTube channel existed. But bear with me, George, and please let's do it constructively because I want to be a part of the solution and not add to part of the problem. That's why I'm making this. And I genuinely want to have an active dialogue. So please reach out to me. Phat Love Talk, Alpha Phenomenon Gaming. I'm available. Let's start at $625 a month. Okay? So the most I've ever made in my entire life was $48,000. All right? I got lucky. I had a decent job. I was making $23, $24 an hour. I was also getting overtime a lot. Almost every week I was getting overtime. So I made $48,000 1 year, one time. Never made it since, and I don't have the income to make that now. January of this year, 2024, I did lose my job. If you listen to my podcast, you're aware of that. Took me almost 3 months to find another job. And I had to drop from a 23, 24 hopeful job to $18.50. So making $18.50, let me pull up a calculator because that's going to help me do some of the math. Boom, right here on the screen for you guys to see. If I do $18.50, I times that by 40-hour weeks, I hit enter, that's $740 a week. Let's times that by 2. Every pay period, I'm making $14.80. All right, now let's times that by another 2 because that's going to be my monthly income, $2,960. This is before taxes are taken out, before anything is taken out. But we're not going to worry about taxes because this is a hypothetical. And George likes to run on hypotheticals and the goodwill of ideas, not, to make his videos more buzzy. Because using reality would make his videos less interesting, although more informative and more helpful. George, I want to be an ally. I'm not trying to be mean. All right, so we're making $2,960 a month, not even $3,000. Now, let's times that by 12. 1 year, I'm making $35,520. Now, if you count in taxes for, 24 paychecks in the 12 year or 12-month year, you're going to probably be making closer to 30,000. Look, I'm not making 50,000. I'm not making close to 50,000 unless I get a fat raise or offered a salary. I'm never going to make 50,000 in my lifetime. No, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. Okay? I know that I don't have a college education. I know I don't have a secret skill in my sleeve that's going to make me beneficial for a certain trade or industry. I am an average American with a high school education. I have childhood trauma just like everybody else, and it messed me up and stunted my potential. Do I use it as a crutch? No. I'm seeing a therapist, and I've grown a lot, and I'm very, very happy with where I am in my life. But I just want to say this to bring up the point. You can't just blanket state that a 20-year-old, and he uses this metric for 30s and 40s, so you can't just blanket say, yeah, 625 is going to get put away and magically be there for you to have $1.3 million, George. I'm really, really sorry to burst your bubble, but this is not the reality of your situation. You're making a YouTube video to put out buzz, to draw in attention. And if we even go a step further, I'm going to drag this over here real quick. If we exit the full screen, and we go down here, he's got 216,000 subscribers. This one got 472,000 views, almost 500,000 views. George, you did it. You did it. You got the views. You look at my YouTube channel, I can't even bust triple digits. All right? But you know what? You did it. And I'm proud of you. All right? So let's move on. All right? 625 George. Oh, I want to do more math, but we're going to go ahead and move on for just a second. All right.
Americans in their 30s. Average balance, $38,400. Contribution rate, 8%.
Okay, 8% and $38,400 contribution rate. Oi, oi, oi. If you look back at the 20s, it was $10,500 and 7%. I didn't touch on that too much because I got distracted by the fact that he had wild math after the fact. But this is going to come up for the 40s as well as it was in the 20s and now 30s. So by your 20s, you should have $10,500 with a 7% investment in your 401k. And by 30s, you should be $38,400 with 8%. And that's not even enough, he says. That's the average American balance. And guess what? These are average balances sourced by Fidelity in 2021. Look, you're using 2021 stats, George, in 2024. This was 3 months ago. So your stats are a few years off, by the way. So you might want to update that before you make a YouTube video to push a certain narrative. But I'm not going to talk about that. Let's listen to a little bit longer because he does say a few more things before I skip to the end part.
So the average American in their 30s still isn't contributing enough to their retirement. And I'm guessing this is because a lot of people in their 30s are starting families, they're taking on mortgages, they have debt hanging around, and at this point in your life, you might not even be thinking about retirement yet. You've subconsciously said to yourself, that sounds like a problem for future me.
Now I am future me. This sucks.
But that's a big mistake. This is the time to make saving for retirement a priority. If you're in your 30s and you still have debt and no emergency fund, that's why you're only investing 8%. You're doing too much at once and you still have a mess to clean up. Here's what you need.
Too much. You're doing too much at once and you still have a mess to clean up. Wise words from George. Quote him in the press.
To do. Pause investing. That's right. I'm telling you to stop investing just for a little while to get these prerequisites knocked out so you can get back to investing way more than 8%.
So he wants you to pause all of your investing, if you're investing at all at that point, and just go full on, take out your debt like the Dave Ramsey debt snowball says, and invest outside of what your normal American average citizen income is. It's wild, and he has a statistic right here, so we're going to listen to that real quick and then jump to the end.
And research shows that the top indicator of investment success is your savings rate, aka the percentage of your disposable income that you're actually putting into retirement. So let's get that 8% up to 15% to make sure you're doing enough to reach those retirement goals.
Unless you're an average American who can't afford to do 15%, or your company only matches 3-4%, sometimes they might do more, and you're not really getting any benefit out of a 401k, investing more than that company match percentages, where you could actually invest in a high yield saving account separately from your employer and make probably some more money if you get like more of a returned from that. But I'm just spitballing. I'm going off of what Dave Ramsey, your boss, has said in the past. I'm not sure who runs these videos through proofing before they post, but I just feel like this is flawed data, and it's misleading a bunch of people, or discouraging a bunch of people to give up, because you may make this video as a way to say, hey, you got to do these things to get there. But for some people, all they're seeing is, this is impossible and I'll never get there. And it's not victim mentality. It sometimes is, and that's the problem, and people need to work on themselves always. But outside of the victim mentality percentages, it's literally average Americans who are just wanting to improve. That's why they came to your video in the first place. And seeing things like this does not give them the reinforcing encouragement that they would normally get from what they're looking for. Honestly, an average person like me who makes less than 40,000, won't even come close to 50,000 anytime soon, sees this as an impossibility, because you're taking 15% from 50,000, that's 625 that you gave us earlier, that number you pulled out of the air from that 15% magical income. If you see, we're going to do more math now. If you were going to look, let's clear this out. If you were going to look, let's say I make the 35,520, and this is, of course, before those taxes I said earlier were pulled out. And what's the percent for that? Okay, so I crunched some numbers, and 15% of the income that I put on my calculator right here, if you look right here where it says $29.60, if you do 15% of that, it's $444, not even close to $650. And then if you do 15% of that yearly income, that's $53.28. That's not going to get you to the $1.3 million, because I don't have the extra income to pull out of my magic hat that Uncle Sam's magically going to give me, or my dead rich uncle from Neverland is going to eventually give me as an inheritance. All right? It doesn't exist, George. It's not there.
See what a grade A nest egg would be for someone in their 30s. If you're 35 years old right now and you started investing $625 a month at age 25, you likely have around $131,000 in your retirement fund. If you've got that much sitting in retirement, you're on track to retiring a millionaire.
Yeah, let's slow down there, George. Let's slow down. Like I'm saying, 625,000. Now, let's take the same math and do some American math, some realistic math, some me of the people math. All right? So he did that. So it's 444. Now, he did that for 10 years, 25 to 35. All right? So if we pull this back over here and we do the 444, he times that by 10. That's not the right math at all. Okay, my bad. It's 444 times 12 months. All right? This is 1 year. Then we times that by 10 years, and we have 53,280. And that does not equal 131,000. In fact, that's almost a difference of double. Why? Because we started at 444 opposed to 625, which is $200 less. But moving on, guys, this is wild. Nevertheless, my bad math aside, this is wild, and I don't agree with it.
Next up, Americans in their 40s. Average balance, $93,400. Contribution rate, 8%.
This is, again, another wild statistic. Look, okay, so I'm looking at my notes on my phone. You have the 93,400 contribution rate of 8%. This is not possible for me in 10 years' time when I'm sitting on a goose egg. So what am I supposed to where am I supposed to magically get this money from? Now, I will give George some credit. He has some really good suggestions, albeit skewed math and buzzy, terminology. There's another Ramsey personality who I don't even remember his name. He's the finance guy. But he literally has some of the more out there suggestions. And he always says things like, go get a side hustle, go get everything you can, And then, of course, Dave Ramsey's gazelle intensity, beans and rice and beans, intentionality, all that stuff. And yeah, there are people who do that and are successful with it, and there are people who do that and then suffer from that because they go all in and they get diminishing return. And it's not their fault most of the time. You know, when you make $40,000 a year and you're single, you can generally make it just fine depending on where you're at. You may have to get a roommate, you may not, depends on where you are in the country. Fluctuating incomes in the economy factor into a lot of that. But if you even have one kid or a pet or any sort of additional income that you got to pay for, this is an unrealistic possibility. And yes, they like to play it up to be some sort of master plan, set your eyes to the sky and fly. But like this isn't a song at the credits of Looney Tunes, okay? You know, Space Jam was a movie, not a reality. All right, I can see it, I can be it, I believe I can fly. You know, I'm not going to get copyright stricken here, but that's the gist of it. All right, George, what have you got to say? You know what? I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. We're going to move up to 604 because you make some wild jokes about your 40s. Let's go ahead and move up.
Salary and expected rate of return from our last example. Let's say you're 45 years old and you started investing $625 a month at age 25. You should be around $472,000.
Can again, let's say your income never changes. You're making $50,000 from 20 years old. You're rolling in $500,000 at this point. You're cruising. And you're not cruising for a bruising, you're cruising for a successful retirement. Right? You already see the vision board in your head, smoking a cigar on the beach with, you know, just exotic birds in a cage next to you, somebody feeding you grapes and a second person fanning you, and you're just living your best life upstairs in that fantasy in your mind. Look, I don't like the beach. I don't like sand in my toes. That's not my dream. But the point of the matter, God, I can't even make a joke. The point of the matter is, simply put, that's now going to be 20 years of putting aside $625 a month. George, if I can't put aside $100 a month, how am I going to put aside $625? You want me to just DoorDash every single night for the rest of my life, make an additional $500, and then never see my family and just suck it up and say, I'll see them when I'm 60? If they're there, George. If they're there.
Dollars in that nest egg, which is well above the average we saw earlier. But if you're in your 40s and you haven't even started saving for retirement yet, there's still time and there's still hope. The average salary for Americans in their 40s is around $59,000. So if you started investing 15% of that salary starting at age 40 and did that every year until you retire, you could still retire with $1 million net worth.
So he does skew right here and stop and say an average salary based on, I guess, this 2001 Fidelity report from 3 years ago, which by itself makes this video completely invalid and verified. An extra $9,000, you pull the 15% from that. From 40 to 65, he says you can get $1 million in 20 years, 25 years technically, if you retire at 65. And he's saying, don't worry, if you wasted your 20s, you wasted your 30s, your life is a mess. But at what is this, your 40s, you decide you're going to get it on track all of a sudden, and, life didn't happen, you didn't have kids, you didn't have, any sort of legal anything, you didn't have a car breakdown, and you didn't have, a car payment, and you didn't have all this extra stuff called life and existing that he's not taking into account. If none of that happened and your life is absolutely perfect and primed for $59,000 a month, then yes, you qualify, and I believe in you. That's what he's saying, guys. And don't let his boyish charm and good looks fool you, because trust me, I see through the facade, and I'm not buying it.
So have hope. Next up, we've got Americans in their 50s.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to stop it and talk to you guys about just my general thoughts, okay? and the first thing I want to say is this isn't an attack on George Kamel. This isn't an attack on any of the Ramsey personalities or anything related to any of that. Look, it's just a YouTube video from a YouTube guy that I had a problem with. Nothing more, nothing less. And I gave you some real life examples from my side as an average American not making 50,000. I gave you some examples as to what it could be. I did some bad math along the way, but the point still remains that if you set aside $625 every single paycheck, or actually I think it was every single month. Am I right there? Yeah, $625 a month. So technically, if you do the math on that, and this time I'll do some proper math, I promise. If you split that 625, divide that by 2, that's going to be $312.50, right? So yeah, that's got to be right. So if you're putting aside from every single paycheck $312, and don't forget that 50 cents, it will add up in that retirement fund, will be shrinked from 1.3 million to 1 million, because that 0.3 is going to be accounted in that 50 cents most likely, or at least I'm assuming that's what George would say. You got to make sure every penny counts. So this is wild to me. He's saying put $625 a month away, 15% of your income. So this is based off of a $50,000 annual income budget, whereas we've already gone through the 30-ish thousand that I have. So I think, just my thoughts at the end, George needs to make an apology video. Not to me. I don't care. He's lying to the people. He's lying to, how many people watch this video? He's lying to 472,000 Americans, or worldwide people. He's lying to 216,000 subscribers who subscribe to him because they trust what he's saying and they believe in him because he's backed by Dave Ramsey, who some people hate, some people love. Look, it's a classic debate. People think they know everything, so they have to be right. I'm not in that camp, okay? I don't have to be right. In fact, I'd love to be proven wrong. It's a chance to learn. So, George, I challenge you. Respond to me. Tell me what you think, and I would love to kind of have a dialogue, because I only want to be educated. I lost my job for a few months. I lost my $1,000 in savings. Guess what? That screwed me up, and building that back is my priority. And then now there's a whole mess of other things to worry about because I have an HSA from a couple of different jobs, and I have 401ks floating out there from a couple of different jobs that I'm not really inclined to locate and combine. So tell me, George, tell me your wisdom, and I will listen. I'm not saying this to be sarcastic, and I'm not saying this because I want to have some sort of beef or disagreement or start drama. I really don't care about drama. I leave it out of my life because I like to live a peaceful life. And I believe in love, in Jesus, and all of the good things that go along with that. I'm just saying, I've been trying. I've known about Dave Ramsey since my 20s, and I've tried this, and it hasn't worked. And not exactly this, because nobody in their right mind has $625 of expendable income that they can throw away at the end of a month, or $312.50 to be more precise. You know what that $312 go towards? Groceries and bills. All right? You're lucky if you have extra money for pancakes at IHOP on the weekend. All right? That's the straight truth, okay? Some people are in fortunate positions where they live at home or they have a roommate. Maybe they can make that work. But some people want the independence, want the freedom of being on their own and proving to themselves and whoever that they can do that. And so they have to live on a budget, and it's strict, and it doesn't allocate the $625 that you're referring to. I've made this video too long. I respect you, George, but I don't agree with it. I want people to succeed. I want people to be successful. I'm not a financial guru by any means, but I at least know common sense when I hear it, and this is not that. I love you guys. Subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Phat Love Talk on my podcast, or the next gaming video on Alpha Phenomenon Gaming. Take care of yourselves, and I'm out. George, I apologize. You were right. I can't do math. because I don't have the education you have. I don't have the brains you have. I don't have the glasses that you have. Mine, these are these old rusty things that don't help me see that much better, even though I need them legally to drive and read a book. Yeah, you have that top tier, and I apologize. Even my hair, look, it's flat. I'm not even using the product that you're using, and I can't compete. So that's on me.